cat photo. You know, we can make HTML here, and you could put all the rest. I'm just going to put inside the body image source equal, and I just copied an image from Google. And now it should show that when I restart it and go to cat. So go to cat here. There's a picture of a cat. So pretty easy. This isn't actually all too far removed from what from a real web page. Now the way we're going to render HTML will be a little different in a bit. And the way we do the routing though is pretty much like this. This is how we'll tend to do routing, okay? And so, pretty straightforward, hopefully. I do want to mention that there are other ways to route. There are other libraries out there. So, if you search for HTTP router, there's all kinds of stuff. This is a good one, this HTTP router project. So, it has slightly different syntax. But remember, like I showed you, the servmux is something you put your own code, so you can choose how to route differently. And this guy, he made it so you could do this kind of thing. And so, let me show you why that's helpful. So we have our cat handler, and anything underneath cat goes there. So if I go to /cat, so I have a cat whose name is Chester. So I went to /cat/Chester. So normally, this would probably be plural. Okay? And typically with URLs, we have the thing, like cat, we'd say cats / and then an ID of a cat, like the number, or possibly the name of a cat, to look up a specific cat. So typically with URLs, if I went to /cats, I would expect that to list a bunch of cats. If I went to /cats and / the name of a cat, I'd expect it to show one particular cat. And so structuring your URLs like that is an example of RESTful approach to, so that's REST, R-E-S-T. A RESTful approach to URLs, okay? And RESTful is this whole design philosophy. You can look it up, but it's generally a good idea to structure your pages that way just because it makes it way easier to think about. Because like I said, we can do the routing however we want, but this is a very general way, is to /cat/ and ID. So I'm going to change it to cats. So that fixes this problem. Now, how do I get the cat name? So I'm going to put inside the body here cat name, and then strong, and then, you know, what do I put in there? And then a BR, and then I have a picture. So how do I get this guy?
Maybe instead of having your cat handler being typed in, you can make it a struct with different properties.
So you want to change this to a struct?
I don't know. Don't follow my lead. I'm just thinking out loud.
So we got to get the cat name from the URL, right? So we can say rec.url.path. The path is going to have cats, so it would be /cats/ the name of the cat. And so we could split on / and get the last one, which is / would be, so 0. The first one would be the empty string, and then the second one would be cats, and the third one would be the cat name. So, and that would get our cat name. Right? Everybody follow why? /cats / name. This is 0. This is 1. This is 2. Okay. So that will get our cat name. So if I rerun this, there. Now if I change the name, call it Max instead, and it changes it. Now, remember when I told you this is a bad idea? This may not actually work. What did I do wrong?
Chrome sometimes escapes that stuff, I think.
Yeah, that's why I said it may not actually work. But you could bypass that easily. In this case, it didn't work. But anyway, generally don't. Don't just input it directly. We'll see a better way to do that with templates. That'll fix that problem. So that's how we can get it out of the path. It's just a string. We use it like a string. We can manipulate it, do whatever we want. And that's why that other router might be a little nicer. Is because it has that ability built in. And so you could just do name, and it would let you get the name out of it by doing that by name function. But, you know, whatever you like is fine. I think servmux is plenty fine by itself. But, you know, other people prefer other ways. And these are libraries. You can install them. You just do go get and the name of the library, github.com/julianschmidt/acbrouter, and you can use it. Okay, so that's how we do routing. Everybody understand routing? Any questions about routing?
Can you scratch that one out too, please? Thank you. So how would you get the name in a way that wasn't susceptible to cross-site scripting? Or we'll learn that later.
Well, you do strings out replace. This less than sign with ampersand LT.
Okay.
And greater than sign with ampersand GT, semicolon. And you replace double quotes with ampersand QUOT, semicolon. And yeah, you replace all the characters that could potentially cause problems. Or you can use the temple library, which we'll see later. So let's see. So we saw the servmux. So we can handle different URLs based on the pattern. It turns out this pattern is super common. So let me show you two additional things. One is that if we looked at the servmux, we saw an additional method. Handle func. And so this guy, so we have handle. What does handle take? A handler. Handle func takes a function. Okay? So we have to pass in a function that matches this type. So let's suppose we wanted to do this instead. We can take handler should be a function that takes a response writer and a request. Boy, that looks familiar. That's just this, right? That's exactly the same type as this. So we just copy that, rename it to func, and there we go. Except this has to be handle. Right, so I'm not using dog handler anymore. So. And so what this does is it makes it a little easier if you just want to pass in a function. I don't have to go create a type with a method and give the definition. I can just make a function directly by using handle func instead of handle. Okay? Everybody understand the difference here between this and this? This is a handler. Handler has a method called serve_http, and it will call that. This is a function, okay? And when I pass it to handle func, when it goes to this URL, it will call this function. But otherwise, they're almost identical. In fact, maybe it will help to see how this is implemented. So there's a type in here called handler func.
It's just my pacemaker, don't worry.
Someone's code
Okay.
I don't even like that. Good. Never want a pacemaker.
So we have handler func of response writer request. So that's the function. Notice they implemented the method, right? The method serve_http on top of handler func, and all it does is call itself. Any questions about this code?
All right, so a handler func is, just scroll up just a little bit, that is right there, and that implements, takes a response writer and a request, and then is the handler func? No, it's not an interface. And then it implements the handler interface with serve_http.
So it has a method called serve HTTP that takes these two arguments. And all it does is invoke itself.
Okay.
F here is a function. It just calls itself with the two arguments. So they've trivially implemented an interface so that you can use the function as part of this. It just makes it way shorter. I don't have to create this type to do it. So I say handle func, I give it a thing. In general, if you have handle, you'll have a handle func, and you can give it a function. So that means I can do the same with cat. I can take him and plop him in here. So, and then change, what did it do? And then, like that. And then this becomes handle func instead of handle, and everything's good. Okay? So we can use the function instead of having to create a type. But it's just doing the same thing underneath. It's just secretly creating the type and filling in the definition. So it's really straightforward what it's doing.
Can you copy that to Scratch, please? Thank you.
So the serve mux is so common that there's a default server that HTTP starts with. So it's the second thing we want to talk about. Where did HTTP go? There it is. So up here, there is a variable default server, or default serve mux, I should say. So they've already created one. So they created a server ready to use. Okay? So we could say http.defaultServeMux.handleFunc. And that would attach it to the default serve mux. The neat thing about the default serve mux is it's used if we pass nil in for this guy. So if we have listen and serve, and the second parameter is nil, it will use http.defaultServeMux, which means we can change these. So instead of saying mux here, we say HTTP, get rid of the mux, and there we go. So this is the other way to do it. So you don't have to create your own serve mux. It has one sitting in HTTP ready to use. We're just using the one that's in there and calling these functions. Okay? But it's doing the same thing underneath. Like if I go look at handle func, we'll see that it just says default serve mux.handleFunc. So it's just a wrapper around the call. It just makes it easier to use. So you don't have to use these if you don't want. I kind of like this explicitness a little nicer, but you can use these if you want to. They can just come out of the box like this, so you can just pass nil to listen and serve, and then http.handleFunc or http.handle, and you'll be good to go. Okay? So that's the default serve mux. And that's how we in general build web apps in Go, is that we have a bunch of routes. For each of those routes, we either call a function or a handler, and then we do stuff. Write HTML to a file, all kinds of stuff we can do. But that's the general approach to web development in Go. Everybody understand? All right, so let's move on.
What are we going to do for the last 2 weeks? That's it?
Well, now we're going to look at specifics of how to do particular things in HTTP. For example, serving files. So the issue with this one is I sort of hot linked this image from Google. It'd be cool if I had it on my own server and didn't link to some web page out on the internet. So instead of, in other words, I want to change this URL to be that. Okay? I want this image to sort of live on my server. And to do that, we need the server file. So what happens if I just do this, if I change it to this? Let's get rid of dog. We're going to get rid of dog for now. We don't care so much about that. So let's see what happens.
You mean without saving the local file locally?
Yeah,
Should get an error.
exactly.
Broken image on,
Broken image. Why is there a broken image?
can't find the file.
So, but notice what it did. It tried to reach this URL. So let me add a handler for the root of our website. And what this will do is anything that doesn't match will go to this tab. So this will catch every other URL. And then I just want to print it out. I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to print it out, okay? So we got a request for home cat. So /cats went to that other handler, and we created that HTML, and then it tried to load the image from our server, because it did slash. So when you do slash in the name of the URL, it tries to load it from the same place. Okay, it went to localhost :9000/home-cat.jpg. It expected to find an image. And I printed it out here, I didn't do anything. So it basically did 404, not found, is what it did, okay? Because it couldn't find this picture of a cat. So we need to make this return a cat, okay? So, how do we do that? Well, first we have to create a route for it. What was it, home-cat, I think? Yeah, home-cat.jpg. And then we give the same function that we're used to seeing. And then inside of here, we want to serve our cat photo. So how do we do that? Well, first I got to download the picture of the cat. I forgot what the URL was. There it is. So I'm going to save that to downloads. I'm just going to move it in here. So now I have main.go and home-cat.jpg. So just to see that, it's 43 kilobytes. That's about right for an image like that. So now I have the file locally. So how do I serve that file to this guy? We already know how to do this. What's the first step when I work with a file and go? Open it. Right? F, air, os.open. I give it the name of the file. Incidentally, do not take the name of the file from the user. They could put in there //etc/password and get all the passwords on your computer. Okay? So do not trust user content ever, because user content could be anything a user puts in, and they could read any file on your computer. So
they would just randomly keep trying many different dot locations.
Yeah, until they got
upload like 50 different trials until finally, oh, I hit your home, got your passwords.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's cool.
Don't trust the user with that information.
And do people have scripts running that just go to every
Yes.
place where you could
If you run a website,
try all that?
Yeah, if you run a website and log every request, you will see so many attempts made at getting to admin.php. I don't run PHP, but they try, right? Because there's known vulnerabilities in WordPress and all kinds of apps out there. And yeah, there's people who are just trolling the internet, trying to find vulnerable sites. So it's not just like, oh yeah, that might happen. No, it definitely will. Leave your site open long enough and somebody will attempt to hack it.
But that's illegal, right? I mean, that's hacking. I mean, not to be, but that's like somebody in China or somebody who's,
Yeah. Or some 13-year-old kid who's bored. Yeah, exactly. So now we do need to think about handling errors, because now I have like almost a real site I'm building, and so if the file doesn't exist, I would like to inform the user something sensible. Okay, because if I just sort of silently fail, weird things can happen. So I want to do that. HTTP has a nice function called error. So let's go look at that. I've lost there it is. HTTP, it's up here. Error. You give it a response writer, the string that you'd like to show, and a code, and it will print that error out to HTTP. So the response writer is res, the message is file not found, and the code is 404. Yeah, you could do that.
Try your // somewhere else.
Okay, so we opened a file, we got to remember to close it, and now this becomes important. It wasn't such a big deal before, but now it's a big deal because this server is always running. So if we're like opening this file over and over and over again, we have all these excess file handles, we never close them. Eventually we could run out of memory. What will probably happen is the operating system will go like, you're not allowed to open any more files, you've opened too many. And so remember to close the file. And then we'll do something with the file. For now, we can just print this error message, say, and say like not implemented. So in general, if you want to do a custom error, use the error code 500. That's a server error, okay? So let's see, we should expect to see a 500 now. Now it'll probably still show the broken image. And so this is where your net debugging is helpful. So now we get a red. Red meaning a 500. You can see the status code here. And you could look at it and see a response message and stuff. Not implemented.
Would be console 2?
Yeah, it might be over here. Yeah, 500 internal server error. That's the default name for that error. So we want to return it. So let's delete that. How do we do that? IO.copy. To res, right? So we're copying the file into the response. So we're copying the file into the response. Right? So that should send the file to the user. Let's see if that works. Look at that. Pretty easy, right?
Wow, that's awesome, Caleb.
And so things we can improve about this. One, we're not setting the content type, so it just guessed it. Like I said, browsers are very forgiving, so we should probably be setting the content type here. Other things that we should be doing, images can be kind of large. 40 kilobytes is not super big, but sometimes they're megs. Okay. Remember that E tag thing I talked about? With an image, it's a great time to use that E tag. Because if it sets an E tag based on the contents of the file, and then a user tries to access it again, the first thing it'll do is be like, hey, what's the version of the file? And then it'll respond, it's version 1234, and be like, well, that's the version I have, and it doesn't have to download that multi-megabyte image again, right? It already has the image for it, so it doesn't have to do it again. So it's a good idea to set the E tag, it's a good idea to set the cache control, and a bunch of other stuff. To set the date of the file, because sometimes it uses that to do the caching. So it's a good idea to set all those things. We could do that, but there's a much easier way to do this. There are a couple functions in here we can use. One is serve content. Okay, so let's look at the types of that. Serve content, you give it a response writer and the request. The name is the name of the file. Now that could just be something you make up, but it could also be the actual name of the file. The mod time is the last time the file was modified. And then the content is a read secret. And so if we want to use this guy, we'll just copy that. We can...
Just one sec before you do that, can you scratch all that code over? I like that version. Just for reference. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we can say HTTP is serve content, and we'll pass in the response, the request, the file name, so we can get that from f.name, the mod time, which we can get from f.stat, so we can say fi f.stat, and then we'll just do the same thing. So we can get that from fi there means file info. I think it's mod time. And then the content is the file itself. Okay, so this is another way to serve a file. Okay, let me see if make sure that works. You can hit Command Shift R on OS X to make it force a reload. Sometimes it'll not fully reload. So let's walk through these. It takes the response to the request, the name of the file, the mod time of the file. Like I said, this is going to set the headers for the mod time. Sometimes that's used by your browser to determine whether or not it should cache it. The name of the file is pretty obvious what that's for, and then the file. Why do I pass the request? That's kind of a weird parameter. why does it need to know the request? I understand why it needs the response, because that's where it's going to write the file to.
Maybe it takes a look at what came in the request to see if it has an E tag or mod time and can respond.
Exactly. It
Oh,
uses
cool,
information from the request. And in particular, it's going to look at the dates to know whether the E tags match. If it does, it returns a 304, I think, a different status code telling it, hey, you don't have to download this file again. You already got it. It also supports range. The cool thing about serve content is it can resume downloads. Okay? So if they only got half the cat picture, they got disconnected, they reconnect, it may resume the other half of the cat picture. Obviously, for this 43 kilobyte file, that's not a big deal. For a really large file, like say a 700 meg ISO of an Ubuntu Linux install, that's a big deal. That install can save you a lot of time. And so by using the range query. And so serve content does that for you. So in general, if you're serving files to people, don't do it directly, even though it works, because it doesn't do all the headers for you. Use it this way, because then it'll fill in all the headers for you and do range and all the rest of it.
Copy that on number 2, please.
Okay, so there's an even easier way to do this.
And that's to hire
Scratch
that.
We'll wait for the next.
So if you scroll down a little, and look at all the things it tells you it does, right? It fills in all the, okay. Boy, that looks promising, doesn't it? Serve file replies to the request of the contents of the named file. So, we can change this to serve file, resrec, home-cat.jpg. And get rid of all this. And it's just doing the same thing underneath. It'll call serve content, it'll open the file first, etc. So that's a whole lot shorter. Should still work. There we go. So if you want to serve a file, use serve file. And give it a name. Like I said, don't use the name from the user because you can't trust that. So I'll put this one on the scratch.
Thank you.
So serving files is pretty easy, okay? So let's see what we had in the exercises. I don't know if I had one. Yeah, server file from the disk. So we saw how to do these two. So maybe as an exercise, change our dog cat thing to do it from disk. So instead of having your image tag have a source with an HTTP : / whatever, make it a source equal / the name of the file, and then add routes into your serve mux to return the file, okay? Which is what I did here.